Every year around the holidays, my family rents a cabin on the other side of the state. My cousins, aunts, uncles, and even grandparents come out every year. It's actually always a good time, and something I look forward to. We usually don't go to the exact same place every year, but usually go to the same area, if that makes sense. This year, we tried out a new location to do our gathering. There was talk about there being snow coming in, but no one really seemed to be that concerned about it. We made the 3-hour drive across the state, and eventually we got there and met up with everyone. Everything the first night was great. It was good to get to see my family again. Some of them I haven't seen in almost a year. Sometime during the night, I noticed that it had started snowing outside. At that point, it wasn't much, but the next morning everyone woke up and there was at least 5 inches of snow on the ground. I wasn't aware that it was supposed to snow that much, and didn't show any signs of stopping. The younger kids were all super excited, and they spent almost the entire day playing outside in the snow. It wasn't expected to stop until sometime during the night. The day went great, had great food, and all around had a good time. That night, though, is when things got weird. It's worth mentioning that the place we were staying at was basically in the middle of nowhere. There was a small shed-type building out back, but as far as I knew, it was locked and off limits. The snow was high enough that at this point, we were basically snowed in. It was probably around 7 or 8 o'clock. One of my uncles came inside and asked if anyone had been outside lately. Apparently, there were fresh footprints in the snow around the perimeter of the cabin. No one had been out there for hours, and it had been snowing the whole time. A few people went outside to look around. I stepped out on the porch myself just because I was kinda curious. Sure enough, there were footprints outside that led into the backyard. Eventually, everyone came back inside. Some of the adults were talking in the kitchen. I was in the living room area and couldn't really hear, but they seemed pretty concerned. There was a sudden knock at the front door, and everyone stopped talking. My Uncle Jeff walked toward the door and opened it. There was no one out there, but there were fresh footprints right by the door. Everyone had no clue what we should do. We had cell service, but there was no way the police would be able to get out here in these conditions. We decided that we would just lock all the doors and windows and make sure everyone stayed inside. Nothing happened the rest of the night to my knowledge. The next morning, the snow had stopped and was even starting to melt a little since the temperature had increased a bit. Everyone in the family went outside to take some pictures in front of the cabin. After we were done with that, most people went back inside, but I stayed outside and walked around a little bit. There were still footprints in the snow that weren't any of ours. Some of them were at various windows to the cabin. Someone had been looking in at some point, either during the night or earlier in the morning. I walked over near the shed in the backyard. My curiosity was getting the best of me by now. I didn't immediately see anything back there. I did, however, notice that there were footprints leading into the woods. Although I was curious, I didn't dare go in there by myself. Right by the entrance to the woods, there was something on the ground. I walked closer. It was a pair of old jeans. It made no sense why that would be there, but someone was out here clearly, and it was in my best interest to just go back inside. So, I did. I didn't tell anyone about the footprints at the windows or the pants in the backyard. I figured it was best to keep quiet. Everyone was leaving later on in the day anyways. Nothing else happened, and eventually we left back for home with everybody else. Overall, it was an enjoyable trip. The encounter was weird though. We were in the middle of nowhere. There was no reason why anyone but us should have been out there. I don't know if someone was just messing with us looking for a reaction, or if someone possibly had some more sinister intentions. I was home one night with my sister, just the two of us. My mom works late pretty often, so it wasn't unusual. I was playing video games online with my friends. My sister was doing whatever she usually does in her room. My mom wouldn't be home till at least 11 p.m. By that point, it would be about time to go to bed since I had school in the morning. I had my headset on, talking to friends during our game. I was hearing this weird metallic tapping type noise over the sound of my friends talking. I took one headphone off and the sound was a bit clearer now. It was such an odd sound that I still didn't know what it was. I couldn't even tell exactly where it was coming from either. I put my headphone back on and tried to resume playing. The noise seemed to stop, or at least I just couldn't hear it anymore. I took a break at one point to go get a snack, and there was the sound again. The metallic tapping noise. It kinda sounded like it was coming from the other side of the front door. I walked over and looked out the peephole in the door. There was nothing out there other than the snow that was beginning to fall. Coincidentally, the tapping noise had stopped too. I didn't really know what to think. As long as the noise stopped, I was content though. I went back to my game and left one earphone out just to listen. I played for another hour and a half or so. I heard the sound once or twice again, but only like a minute at a time before it would stop. Eventually my mom came home from work and it was time to go to bed. School would come early in the morning. I woke up the next day, had breakfast as usual, and stepped out the front door. It had snowed quite a bit last night and was still snowing. By the way, I'm from Canada, so obviously having a lot of snow wasn't at all uncommon. What was uncommon though was the fact that there was a snowman in our yard, facing the front door. It even had sticks poked in it to act as arms. I have to admit, it was a pretty good snowman, but I didn't build it. My sister couldn't have either. It had only started snowing last night while I was playing video games. My mom came to the door as well, and now she saw it. She had a confused look on her face. It was weird, and maybe even a little funny, but I had to catch the bus. I was thinking on the bus the whole way to school, which of my friends could have snuck over to my house in the middle of the night and built it. I had a couple names of people who I thought maybe could have done it, and I asked them about it at school just out of curiosity. Everyone I asked denied it. Anyways, the school day ended, and I made it back home. By this point, my sister was still at school, and my mom was now back at work again, so I was home alone. I walked up to the front door of the house, and reached into my pocket for the house key. I noticed on the door handle, there were a ton of little metal scratches that literally hadn't been there the day before when I got back. Most of the scratches were right by the keyhole. My first thought was somehow the weather had damaged the door. I had never seen something like that before. I got inside and Googled it to see if weather could actually cause damage like that. What I ended up finding out was more disturbing. The most likely case is that someone had intentionally been using some other metal object to pick the lock in the door to open it. That would explain the weird metallic noise I heard last night. I ended up telling my mom about it when she got home later, and she went to go look at the door for herself. She seemed pretty concerned about it, but there wasn't much we could do. We didn't have a doorbell camera or anything like that. A part of me still thinks it was one of my friends messing with me, but as time goes on, that seems to be more and more unlikely. Nothing's happened since, but whether it's someone I know or not, I'm just hoping that they don't come back. I was driving home from a long day at work. I was exhausted and just ready to go home and sleep at this point. Unfortunately for me though, it was snowing pretty hard, so I had to be extra cautious on the roads. There was definitely way less cars on the road than there usually was. I guess everyone but me got the memo that it was supposed to snow pretty hard, and already went home. I was going probably 40 and a 70. At this point, just trying to get home safely. I was so tired that I was about to fall asleep while driving. Even though I was going slow, I was fast approaching a car on the side of the road. Its taillights were off, but its backside was sticking out in the middle of the road. It appeared that they had skidded off the road or something. I had to hit the brakes pretty hard to avoid hitting it, my car sliding down the road a bit as I did. I barely avoided hitting this car. I was trying to catch my breath from nearly slamming right into the back of it. I saw someone standing on the passenger side of the car, and now that I was stopped, he was walking over towards me. He had on a big winter coat, gloves, and he had the hood on. He walked over to my window, and I lowered it slightly. He explained that he thought he had a flat tire, and was asking for my help in fixing it. As much as I just really wanted to go home, I felt like I couldn't just leave someone out here in need, especially in these conditions. I got out of my car, and made my way over to his car. I asked which tire was flat, and he said the front passenger side. I walked over there to briefly check it out. From what I could tell, the tire didn't really look too flat. Maybe slightly, but it looked as if it was drivable. It was pretty hard to tell though. I asked where the jack was, and the man said it was in the trunk of the car. I stood there waiting for him to get it, but he ended up asking me if I could pull it out, claiming that he had a bad back. I agreed, although I was admittedly a little annoyed by this. I figured the jack should have already been out. He opened the trunk, and I saw no jack back there. He said it was underneath the padding, and that I'd have to lift up a handle and it would be there. I found it pretty easily. As soon as my hand was on the handle, I was pushed hard from behind into the trunk. The man was now trying to close it on me. I reacted fast by kicking my foot up and stopping the trunk from being shut. I kicked again, harder, and knocked the guy backwards. Luckily, I was bigger than he was and was able to overpower him. I got up quickly, and now the man was trying to grab onto me. I pushed him hard on the ground and into the snow, and went straight for my car. I started it up, backed up slightly, and got out of there. Everything happened so fast. 1 second I was trying to get a jack out to help someone with a flat tire, and the next I was being pushed into a car trying to be kidnapped. I was lucky that I was able to react in time. I should have known something wasn't right from the start. The car was positioned almost too perfectly, and the tires weren't even that flat. I went home and went straight to bed. I just hope that this guy didn't get another opportunity to try whatever he was up to on someone else.